Welcome to Shadow Fable. Tonight, we take a journey into Huntsville, Alabama, to uncover the sinister secrets of a place steeped in tragedy and myth. Beside the vast Maple Hill Cemetery lies a forgotten playground. Known as the Dead Children's Playground, it's a site of whispers, strange occurrences, and, as some claim, a doorway to another realm. It's said that after the sun sets, the voices of long-lost children fill the air. But not all voices belong to the innocent, and not all who visit come back the same. The evening wind tore through the trees, making the branches shudder like skeletal fingers. The chains of the swings clanged softly, the sound faint but persistent, as if some unseen force gave them life. Daniel lingered at the edge of the playground, his heart pounding against his ribcage. He knew he shouldn't be here, but the compulsion was stronger than his fear, stronger even than reason. Emily. Her name was a ghost in his mind, as vivid as the day she left him. It had been 6 months since the accident, but Daniel still felt her presence in every empty room, every laugh that wasn't hers. He'd tried to move on, tried to fill the void she'd left behind, but the emptiness grew hungrier with each passing day. And then he'd heard about this place. It had been a passing comment at grief counseling, spoken by a mother whose voice trembled with unspoken pain.
The Dead Children's Playground,
She'd said.
Some people, they hear things there, see things, feel things.
The others dismissed it, calling it folklore, a cruel trick of the imagination. But Daniel had clung to her words. What if? What if she was right? What if he could see Emily again? And so here he was, standing on the edge of the playground as the sun dipped below the horizon. In his hands, he clutched Emily's favorite stuffed bunny, its fur worn and patchy from years of love. It was all he had left of her, a fragment of a life that felt more like a dream with each passing day. Daniel stepped hesitantly onto the playground, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. The equipment, once painted in cheerful primary colors, was now faded and rusted, like a memory decaying with time. The swings swayed lightly in the breeze, their chains groaning softly. The slide stood crooked, its metal surface tarnished and dull. The merry-go-round, Daniel noticed, was perfectly still, yet something about it felt wrong. He sat down on the lone bench, placing the bunny on his lap. His fingers traced the worn stitching as the memories threatened to overwhelm him. He remembered Emily's laughter, the way she'd insist he push her higher on the swings, her cries of,
"Again, Daddy, again!"
echoing through the park. He'd do anything to hear that laugh again. The sun slipped below the horizon, and the playground seemed to shift. The colors drained from the world, leaving everything cloaked in shades of gray and black. The air grew colder, biting at his skin. And then it happened. Laughter. It was faint at first, like a distant echo, but it grew louder, clearer. High-pitched giggles, the unmistakable sound of children at play. Daniel froze, his breath hitching in his chest. He turned his head toward the sound, his eyes scanning the empty playground. The swings moved again, this time faster, as if pushed by invisible hands.
"Emily,"
he whispered, his voice trembling. The laughter stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than anything Daniel had ever experienced. It pressed against him, making it hard to breathe. Then, slowly, one of the swings came to a halt. The other kept moving. Back and forth, back and forth. Daniel rose from the bench, his legs shaky. He clutched the bunny tightly as he stepped toward the swings.
"Emily!"
he called again, louder this time. His voice echoed back to him, hollow and empty. And then he saw it. In the sand beneath the moving swing, footprints appeared. Tiny, childlike footprints, pressed into the earth as if someone were standing there. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The footprints led away from the swing, one after the other, heading toward the slide. His feet carried him forward before his mind could catch up. He followed the trail, his heart pounding like a drumbeat in his ears. The footprints stopped at the base of the slide, and for a moment, Daniel thought he saw something move. A shadow, small and fleeting, darting just out of sight.
Daddy?
The voice was soft, hesitant. It came from behind him. Daniel spun around, his pulse racing. The playground was empty. The bunny slipped from his grasp, falling into the sand. Daniel told himself he wouldn't return. But the next night, as the sun dipped low in the sky, he found himself walking the familiar path to the playground. This time, he brought a photo of Emily. It was one of his favorites. She was sitting on the swing, her smile wide and bright, the bunny clutched tightly in her arms. The moment he stepped onto the playground, the air changed. It was colder, heavier. The swings were already moving, their chains squealing in the stillness. Laughter rang out again, louder than before, more distinct. Daniel's hands trembled as he pulled the photo from his pocket.
Daddy.
The voice made him freeze. He turned slowly, his eyes wide. She was there, standing at the edge of the playground just beyond the reach of the lamplight. Her hair fell in soft curls, her dress fluttering slightly in the breeze. She held out her hand.
Emily?
Daniel's voice cracked as he said her name. The figure smiled, but there was something wrong with it, something too perfect, too still. She turned and ran, her feet barely touching the ground. Without thinking, Daniel chased after her, his desperation overpowering his fear. She led him deeper into the woods, the laughter growing louder, more chaotic. Shadows moved around him, darting between the trees. Whispers joined the laughter, unintelligible but insistent. Daniel stumbled into a clearing, the moonlight casting long shadows across the ground. Emily stood in the center, her back to him.
Emily,
He whispered, stepping closer. She turned. Her face was not her own. The next day, Daniel sat on the bench, staring at the burned photograph. He barely noticed the elderly woman approach until she spoke.
You shouldn't be here.
She said.
This place doesn't bring them back. It takes more.
Daniel looked at her, his eyes hollow.
I saw her.
He said.
I heard her.
The woman shook her head.
It wasn't her. It never is.
The playground was alive with movement when Daniel arrived. The swings clanged wildly. The merry-go-round spun on its own, and the laughter was deafening. Emily stood in the center, her hand outstretched.
Come with me, Daddy.
Daniel stepped forward, tears streaming down his face.
Emily,
He whispered, reaching out to her. Her hand was ice cold. The world shattered around him, plunging him into darkness. The laughter turned to screams, and Daniel's cries joined them, lost in the void. The next morning, the playground was still. In the sandbox, a burned bunny lay buried in the dirt. Mrs. Harper, watching from her window, sighed and turned away.
They never learn.
She muttered. The dead children's playground waited, silent and hungry for its next visitor.